Welcome to the HCI family of podcasts. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We share our own original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. Join us for practitioner-oriented content around all things leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with the HCI family of podcasts. Corey Poirier, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks so much, John. I'm super stoked to be here.
It is a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from New York today. You're traveling. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah, and today we're going to be talking about creating instant influence as a leader. I think this is super important. Leaders do lots of things. There's lots of important aspects of being an effective leader, but one of the most important things you do as a leader is to influence others around you. I can't force anyone to do anything. I can't motivate someone else, but I can create an environment in which other people become motivated, in which they motivate themselves, right? And it's that way with influence. I can utilize influence to drive the types of outcomes that I want, but it's like that old adage of pushing a rope. I can't force things. I suppose I can try to use coercive tactics to try to get what I want, but really it's all about influence, especially effective leaders, sustainable leaders, people who are actually able to accomplish things sustainably over time, not just getting short-term results. It's all about influence. So we're going to be exploring this together and how we can really start to create that influence immediately as we find ourselves in new roles, maybe with a new team, to start to develop that trust, to develop that the rapport, and to have that influence very early on. As we get started, I wanted to share Corey's bio with everybody. Corey Poirier is a multi-time TEDx speaker and was recently announced as one of just 15 Success Magazine Emerging Entrepreneurs, a first-time award. He's also the host of a top-rated Let's Do Influencing radio show, founder of the growing Blue Talks brand, and has been featured in multiple television specials. He is a Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Apple Books, and Kobo bestselling author, award-winning author, and the co-author of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller, Quitless. There are a lot of other things I could highlight about your tremendous background and professional accomplishments, but I'm going to pause there. Is there anything you would like to highlight by way of your background before we launch on in?
Well, I feel like on two sides. One, our Blue Talks brand is what I've been excited about for 5 years, and I'm still just as
Mm,
excited, John, today as I was when I started. We may or may not delve into what Blue Talks is, but that's a part of my background that I'm really proud of these days. And then, the personal side, which usually never comes up, is I'm the common law husband. I'm a husband, but common law husband to my common law wife, Shelley, and the father to two young boys. And I think these days that impacts so much of my life because I used to be the guy that worked 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day. And now I'm the guy,
yeah.
typically, unless I'm traveling, that's like 35 hours a week. So that obviously had a big impact on my life.
Yeah, well, that's a big transition, just in terms of work-life integration, work-life balance, and all those sorts of aspects. So that's fascinating in and of itself. We could talk about all sorts of things related to that, probably. Well, very good. I would love to hear just a little bit about the Blue Talks brand, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about that, what brought that about, and then we can dive more into influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the Blue Talks brand in a lot of ways was created with the intention to help people influence more people in a
Yeah.
positive way. And so Blue is BLU. It stands for Business Life Universe. I've often described it as if you took TEDx and Chicken Soup and they got married and had a baby, we'd be the
Mhm.
baby. And so ultimately, though, it's kind of interesting because on the front end, as a person watching a Blue Talk or reading our books or what have you, they would see it more similar to TED or what have you, where it's I'm
Yeah.
watching to hear change my life. But the difference is very, I'm going to say distinct. It's basically where there was this great book I read one time called The Customer Comes Second. And it's very counterintuitive to what we think, right? We always think the customer comes first. But the idea behind that book is if you treat your employees well, they'll take care of the customer for you.
Yeah.
And the idea with Blue Talks is if we treat the experts well, they'll take care of the end lesson or end user, whatever they hear or the message they receive. And so with Blue Talks, it basically got launched because I started as a speaker, author, what have you. And I was told if you build it, they will come. And I jokingly now say I went out to the woods to start building and nobody even heard the hammer. Like
Mm.
nobody cared. And so I said, if I can create something to help make it easier for people in the future, that's what I want to do. But I wasn't ready yet. So then I went out on my journey. I spoke at this point thousands of times, but I started speaking like crazy, figured out the hacks to get myself on stages, writing books, all that stuff. And it changed my life, but it took a long time. And I said, what if we could create the platforms so that, let's say, John wants to get on more stages, he wants to build a speaking business, he wants to build a coaching practice, what have you. What if we were able to get him on the platforms that would allow him within months to say, in terms of your bio, let's say, John has spoken on site at events at MIT and Cambridge. He's Barnes and Noble and Amazon bestselling author. He's co-wrote a book with Dr. Joe Vitale from The Secret. He shared the virtual bill with Les Brown and Lisa Nichols, and he's been featured on Apple, Roku, Amazon, Google Play, etc. You can imagine that on your bio in 4 months is like in terms of you uh, attracting clients, in terms of clients perceiving you as more valuable, in terms of clients paying more to work with you, all that stuff happens when you have that kind of bio. What we do is we actually help you get that bio in real time in a matter of months, which took me 15 plus years, but in a matter of months. And on top of that, we also rebroadcast your talk to millions of people, literally. And so you get your message out just like you would with a TED stage, but you also now have a speaking video that you can use on your website and leverage. You have a book that you can say, again, I'm a Barnes and Noble bestselling author, and so on. So what Blue Talks does is help you with all that positioning and leverage. But the big thing I want people to always know is it's not manipulated. You still have to show up and speak. You still have to
Right.
submit your chapter. But we do most of it. It's mostly done for you. But it's not like we're going to make somebody look like an expert that's not good at what they do. The what we feel is the almost the right of admission usually is you're good at your craft or you're getting better at your craft. So we're not helping you become a better chiropractor, and we also don't want to manipulate people into thinking you're a good chiropractor if you're not. But we're helping to highlight you so that you don't still remain a best kept secret.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that it's like you said, it's like hammering in the forest and nobody hears you, or if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? All those old adages or cliches. It's the reality. There are so many great, wise people with amazing insights and great experiences that are out there doing amazing work that nobody knows about. And they may have influence in their small sphere of influence, but how wonderful would it be if they could break through the noise and actually have broader reach? And that's what you're trying to accomplish, right? Is to give them broader reach. And when you look out across the landscape, and I look at like New York Times best-selling authors, and I pick up those books and I read them. I'm like, eh, these aren't necessarily any better, insights than I get from, these other people that are completely unknown. And so what does it come down to? It often comes down to how you position yourself, how you market yourself, how you brand yourself, right? And that's the reality. And that may frustrate people. That may, you know, it's the game, and maybe people don't want to play the game and all of that, whatever. But it is what it is. That's the system we're in. That's the game you play. And if you want to have influence, and if you want to have impact, and if you want to have reach, those are some of the things you have to do to break through the noise, to break through all of the congested chaos of just everything that's out there, right?
It absolutely is. And honestly, when we get to talking about influence, it really is influence. You're able to in fact influence lives, impact people if you are viewed, whether we like it or not, as an expert. And I struggled with this. So let's call a spade a spade. You said like people might not like it or people might not be comfortable with it. I grew up in a small little tiny town, raised by my mother, a single mother, and my grandfather, a carpenter with a grade three education. And he was the most humble person you've ever met in your life. He built a fiberglass space shuttle replica to scale.
Mm.
One of only six in the world as a grade three education carpenter with a bag of nails and a hammer, and he never told a soul. Like we had to tell people. So that was my background. So for me to actually even say I'm a five-time TEDx speaker was foreign. Like I was like that, I would blush if I tried to say that when I started. I had to get comfortable doing it. And I'll tell you what helped me get comfortable doing it, John, is I realized when I started doing it awkwardly that people listened. Or when I didn't do it, somebody introduced me and said he's a multiple time TEDx speaker. It wasn't that at the time, but let's say that was it. And I noticed that people listened more. They leaned in, they put their phone down. And so then I realized if I didn't let people know, then I couldn't impact them in the way I could if they did know that stuff. And so I was doing a disservice if they didn't know my background because the background got them to like basically stop what they were doing and listen. And so I might not like it, but I've learned ultimately that to your point, I can impact more lives if people know my background because they kind of view it still. It may change at some point, but when people hear certain things psychologically, they listen closer or they say, oh, well, if they did all that, they must have been vetted by somebody. And, a great example I always say is like, you want to become the Academy Award winner of your industry. If you think about the Academy Awards, I'm working on a new book right now called Becoming the Instant Expert. And the opening I talk about, and it's actually a study that showed that Academy Award winning actors get paid more and get offered way more roles. I mean, there's actually a university study to back this up. But the point is, without an Academy Award, they don't get paid as much. They don't get as many gigs. Interestingly, when they have an Academy Award, if we hear that, we lean in and listen closer to what the movie's about. So whether we like it or not, that's ultimately what I believe we're striving for if we want to impact more lives and have people take us more seriously.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. And I have a similar kind of general sense and feeling that you described. Like I don't like to be self-promotional. I would prefer for my work to just speak for itself. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. They're like, I do good work. People will just recognize it. If I do good work, it'll be recognized. People will it'll resonate with people. I don't have to be self-promotional. I don't have to annoy people, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I'll just say to that, I'm sorry, but no, that's not the way it works. I wish it was. I really do. I wish it was. I wish that just the fact that I do high quality work is enough, but it's not. That's naive, to think that that's enough. Whether, I'm an academic, so I'm a professor, and I do consulting work as well. I do things like this podcast, and I write, practitioner oriented books and stuff, as well as academic articles and stuff as well. But I've learned 100% that whether it's an academic publication or more practitioner oriented publication, whether it's an academic conference or more of an industry based speaking gig, either place in either type of audience, guess what? That kind of prestige, that reputation, that bio, it 100% matters. And people pay attention in different ways. And maybe it shouldn't matter. And maybe it's that bias that people that you get annoyed with and you think, oh, that just bugs me and it shouldn't matter. But it does matter and people do pay attention differently. And I've been to plenty of conferences, like academic conferences, where you have this big name person who's published all these really great studies, and you go to their presentation and it sucks, right? It's a terrible presentation. They phoned it in, they did not do a good job, but it's packed and everyone is there because they're a name and everyone is there paying close attention and hanging on every word. And it sucks. But guess what? It's packed and everyone is paying attention to every last word they say. Why? Because they're a name and everyone is going to always pay attention to them. And it doesn't matter that the next room over is like the best study that's come out in the last decade. And there's only like 12 people in the room, right? So it's just the reality.
Yeah, I mean, you literally just nailed it. I mean, it's like, to your point, Tony Robbins, if I just pick a name,
Hmm.
Tony Robbins. I mean, it's arguable. Like everything's arguable, right? In terms of how good somebody is, because somebody might love him, somebody might say he's horrible, whatever. But the one thing I can safely say, John, is he's not the best speaker in the world of all time. And when I say that, I mean there's some that are also well known, but not as well known as Tony, that are, I think, for me personally, my taste, are as good as Tony. Now, I think
Yeah.
Tony's a great speaker and he's dynamic and he's probably even a better marketer. But the point of this is Tony is getting paid an exorbitant amount of money to go to a conference. And as you said, people pay attention. And how many people pay thousands to go to his event live because of who Tony is at this point and because of the name he's built? And to me, there's no better example of that than NLP. So Richard Bandler, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, and another guy created NLP. And Tony Robbins was a fan of it and studied with him. And then Tony Robbins started talking about NLP, and you would not believe how many discussions I've had with people who've argued with me saying, no, no, Tony created NLP. Who's this other guy you're talking about? But the interesting part is it's because of Tony's name and how big he's gotten, is that people just heard it from him. And so he made NLP probably more famous than the guy that created NLP, is my point. The other thing is, to back up how powerful this stuff is, look at the as seen on. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but they say that an as seen on banner with the right logos and everything can increase your credibility by 70%. But whether you believe that study or not, just look at the proof of the fact that it's so important that, going back to Tony Robbins or Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I could go down a list, Jay Shetty, for those that know Jay Shetty is, all of those guys and all these ladies like Lisa Nichols, when you go to their website, almost the first thing you see in every single one is as seen on. These
Right.
people have spent their whole career studying this. They know that works, and they wouldn't give up that much great real estate in their website if it didn't work. So there's some of these things I think that are fundamental. But to your point, because of those things, somebody's going to pay money to go to see Tony Robbins at a conference where, like you said, there could be a brilliant speaker with the best study ever next door, and they're still going to be sitting in Tony's room because he's Tony Robbins. It's just the world we
Yeah.
live in.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could be bothered by it. You may not like it. You may be uncomfortable with it, but it's the reality. And so, we have to learn how to play the game if we want to have the impact that I think people want to have. And I will acknowledge it's not for everyone. Like, not everyone wants to be a Tony Robbins, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a Brene Brown or a Tony Robbins or whatever. And like your father, who's completely comfortable, being a quiet behind the scenes person doing an amazing thing. If that's their thing, great, fine. But I know there's a lot of people that do want to have impact. They want to have impact outside of their small little sphere of influence. And if that's the case, then let's explore how we can actually start to do that in more meaningful ways and do that more quickly. So what would you say? What are some of those things that leaders can start to do very quickly to create that instant influence, if not instant, rather rapid influence as they're working in their space?
Well, I feel like if we're talking about that idea of, if we go back to that positioning and how to position themselves so they look like the leader to people, because there's two sides to it, right, John? There's the side of perceived leadership and perceived
Right.
value and perceived credibility. And then there's the side of what you talked about and we talked about earlier is good content. And I think both are necessary. I've often said it from a speaking point of view, uh, content is king, as we hear all the time, but emotional connection is queen, and
Yeah.
queen usually rules the castle. Most castles, the queen rules the castle. So I believe when it comes to how we're teaching, what we're sharing, all that stuff, I believe we have to have a great message. So even if you buy into, I got to build this credibility through positioning and everything else, I think at the end of the day, if you don't have great content, like you said, that person that sucks in that room, at the end of the day, you're still doing a disservice to your audience because you're not bringing the heat and the message. But then other part to that is the emotional connection is how are you connecting with, like, are you emotionally connecting with the person so you move them? So I think there's two sides to it. There's the side of how do we do it from a content point of view, and then there's how do we do it from a, let's call it a logistical point of view of getting that credibility that I mentioned about. So if we look at that side first, it's recognizing where the credibility comes from, like who is creditable, meaning that what let's say platforms are creditable and which ones are going to be the most credible. So I would say I always kind of look at it this way. If you drop me in a city today and said I had to start from scratch and I had to become an influencer, if we use that term, whatever term we want, leader, but known as a person that is credible in my whatever my expertise is. What I would do is I listed one of them. So the first thing I would do is knowing that as seen on is so creditable, I would start getting myself seen on the places that are creditable. And once I've done that, of course, then it becomes okay, getting the logos, putting them every place associated with me. But here's the key thing. So, John, when I say this, is what I would start doing, I said the place that are creditable. Well, let's be honest. I'm not going to start new city, nobody knows me, and get on Forbes and NBC and Good Morning America in the next week. So what I would do first, we're in a world now where this is possible. I would get on like 10 small podcasts. So that's the first thing I would do. Let's just say podcasts. But I would get on 10 small podcasts that nobody probably knows. But because the average person still doesn't necessarily know who's big media and who's not, I would get on 10 small podcasts, get permission from the podcasters that use their logo, and I would create an as seen on banner or get it on my website. So I would have a website, of course, but I would get it on my website that I've been seen on these places. So now you have the as seen on banner that gets some credibility because it still looks, powerful to have that. And then what I would do is then I would work to get on the bigger ones and switch them out. So maybe
Yeah.
a year from now, I have the bigger ones. Not only the fact that it gets you more creditable right from the start, but also when you have those, you can then go to the next one and say, here's 4 or 5 highlight clips from my past interviews. That's how you get on the bigger ones in the first place. So the as seen on banner is something that's so easy to do. You can literally get somebody to design it for you on Upwork or one of these freelance sites for $40, and you just go do the interviews. What you can also do with those interviews now is you can take the highlights of those and make your own highlight reel. So now you have a little bit more credibility now because people say, oh, look, he's got this great message. So they get to see your message through those interviews. There's all kinds of things I would do, like where I would place that stuff, like on the bottom of my email signature and all that kind of stuff. So I would do that at first. The other side to that is I would then go out and find out who are the influencers that I can connect with and then eventually lean on their credibility until I build my own. So, for example, one of the things that I've done with my last book, it's called The Enlightened Passenger. It's a fictional parable. Well, and you're from Salt Lake City. The guy who wrote the foreword, Richard Paul Evans. I don't know if you know who Richard
Mhm.
is.
Yep.
So Richard wrote the foreword. So I'm kind of, and he's a 46-time New York Times bestselling author. So I'm kind of leaning on Richard's credibility with him writing the foreword. Or on the back of the book, we have Lisa Nichols from The Secret wrote one of the endorsements. And so if you can build those relationships, and I can even talk to that, but if you can build those relationships, then they now are vetting you to their community, who then is putting trust in you and discovering you through them. The one thing I'll say about those relationships is I always look at it like I'm building a bank account. So I try to deposit, so I give over and over again to build an equity before I ever ask, which is the withdrawal.
Mhm.
Again, that's a whole conversation, just how do you build those relationships? But they will give you extra credibility because people see photos of you. Another example is photos. If you go to a conference and there's a big name thought leader you're a fan of there, get a photo with them. And that stuff goes on your website and creates credibility. So if I talk about positioning, those are the kind of things I would do. Write a book, obviously, is a huge one. If you're the person that wrote the book on dentistry and you're a dentist in a small town, I bet you're getting more clients if everything else is equal than the dentist down the road that hasn't written the book. So that's the quick answer of some of those little hacks you can do. The other side to that is the great content. And at the end of the day, that's knowing your stuff, putting in the time, putting in the 10,000 hours, if people have heard of the 10,000 hour rule. So me as a speaker, helping other people get on stages, I spent 20 years as a paid speaker before I ever launched Blue Talks. Because my belief was I see a lot of people that are on page one and they're trying to teach people page one. And that's like the person that's for the first time in their life earned 6 figures in revenue, and now they're running Facebook ads saying, "Let me show you how to make 6 figures in revenue." And it may have even been a fluke how they did it, or they, by the way,
Right.
some they may not have even made the money they're saying they're going to help you make. But my point is, that wasn't good enough for me. I had to really put in the time and learn the craft, so that if you say to me, Corey, here's my idea for a TEDx talk, do you think that would work on a TEDx stage? I'm not just speaking from like my guess and theory type thing. I'm actually speaking from knowing what typically works. And so I would say learn your craft, put in the time, whatever that craft is, and you'll eventually probably you won't be discovered maybe like the Tony Robbins, but you'll still be discovered if you're really good. And then if you can connect emotionally with an audience, they'll want to tell other people to go check out your stuff. So again, if I were starting from scratch, those are the things I would do. Great content, put the time in, emotionally connection with everybody, and then figure out what are the hacks you can do that are going to present you as the Oscar winner of your category.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It is all about creating credibility, and there's a variety of ways to do that, right? You've just given us a handful of ways that we can start to build credibility. There's lots of other ways as well, and I think each of us just needs to think about what's genuine and authentic to us, and what we're comfortable with, and what fits with our goals and our career ambitions and whatnot. And if you aim to be a speaker, a coach, a Tony Robbins type, a Brene Brown type, that has a different set of the types of um, strategies that you might try in terms of building your credibility than others, right? But ultimately, I think the game of influence, it is about not just the good content, like you said, which is super important. You have to know your stuff. You have
Mhm.
to you have to like be genuinely good at what you do. You have to have the skills, the competencies, the capabilities, the knowledge. You have to know your stuff. But then you also have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to connect. You have to have like genuine connection and trust with people around you to have influence. And without that, that influence just won't be there, no matter how smart you are. Some of the dumbest people I know are like the most brilliant people I know, right? And they don't have any influence because they're brilliant, but they just do not have connection. They do not resonate with people. They lack that EQ, they lack that emotional intelligence. And so both are super, super important. And again, I wish that I could just rest on the quality of my work. I wish that was enough, that people would just pay attention and say, oh, John is great. And so I'm just going to pay attention to him all the time. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. So we always have to be thinking about how can we have better influence, whether it's in our team, in our organization, in our industry, or whatever the case may be. Well, Corey, I note the time. I need to let you go. Before we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
So, as far as the connecting further, I mean, this is probably abnormal, John, and I'm just starting to do this every now and then. But I had Tom Ziegler years ago, Zig Ziglar's son, on the show, and Bob Berg a separate time on the show, both high-level influencers, and they're the only two people to this day still that did this. So I wonder if I'm foolish doing it. But if people want to connect directly with me, I'm going to give my email address. So it's Corey@bluetalks.com, which is Corey at BLU talks with an S on the end, TALKS.com. If people want to reach out directly, and if we talked about it, if they need help with the part we're talking about, the piece of how do I get viewed as the expert, how do I position myself better? If they need help with that side, that's where we come in. If you just want to say, hey, I heard you on the show, like this or that, that's the most direct path. If you want to go the less direct path, you can go to CoreyPoirierMedia.com. And I believe all the social handles and everything are there, and you can reach it that way. Of course, you can Google us as well. So there's a lot of different patterns or paths that way if you want to reach out. And we would love to hear from you. So again, even if it's just an email to say hi, that works too. The other part is kind of the final word on this area. I honestly think, and this is going to sound kind of maybe different than maybe a strategy or anything, but if you can find that which you are passionate and purposeful about, and then spend every day living on purpose, most of the rest of what we're talking about will probably fall into place for you.
Yeah.
So I've studied, this is something we didn't talk about, but I've interviewed close to 8,000 thought leaders. It might be over eight now, but let's just say close to eight. And the number one common trait is that they spend their days living on purpose.
Mm.
And so I believe that I call it vitamin P. And I believe if you take vitamin P, it is the game changer for you. But I think most people don't know how it feels, so they don't see why should I even bother? But what I can tell you is it changes absolutely everything. So what I would leave people with is if you can find a way to do that which is your purpose in this area we're talking about, you're probably going to influence and impact more people than you ever thought possible. So put in the effort to find your purpose, whatever that takes.
I love it. Vitamin P. Let's go for it. Thank you, Corey. Wonderful conversation. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Corey and his team can do for you. Check out his books, check out his website, all of the opportunities to connect. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and please join us again soon.